Ain't you tired of that same old thing? There ain't no shame, cause everybody ain't gon' change. Moxie's looking to stop like champion. His cover's blown, can't fool us for too long. We need a real world champ, no more cheap shots. Consider Mox the right doctor for the detox. You know when it... This is not how this was supposed to go!
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of the All Elite podcast. We had a couple of technical difficulties on Monday, so things definitely didn't go as they were supposed to go, but we're back on Wednesdays right after an episode of Dynamite. We're back with Phil and AJ, both of my co-hosts, so glad to have both of you guys back. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Signed up for my GED classes today. I'm excited about that. How are you doing? How's Phil doing?
I'm doing great. I'm freaked out about the coronavirus. I hope the show next week in Rochester that I'm supposed to attend actually happens so I can go and enjoy a wrestling event for the first time in 6 years.
Yeah, we constantly keep joking with Phil and harassing him that maybe the coronavirus will end up canceling next week's event, just as a way to mess with our friend, I think, because I don't think me and AJ necessarily really buy into the fact that it will affect AEW too quickly, but you never know. It could. It has affected a lot of things within the world of just in general, so not too much within the world of wrestling yet, but hey, that's something to keep our tabs on. But this is the All Elite podcast, not the coronavirus podcast, so let's talk about tonight's episode of All Elite Wrestling. What did you guys think? Was there anything big that really stood out to you? This kind of felt like a good episode, but still very tame.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. There was nothing that shocked me. I mean, Lance Archer was cool, but I thought it was kind of an underwhelming debut. So nothing too much to write home about for me.
I'll agree with you, AJ, that the debut for Lance Archer was kind of underwhelming, and I'll get to that when we break down the show segment by segment. No, really, there's not really a standout moment that really comes out to me, but it wasn't a bad show like last week. I would kind of consider that to be like a filler episode. But this week had like good action and advanced storylines, so it wasn't a total throwaway. It just wasn't like totally memorable.
Yeah, this one felt really dedicated to building up that the Elite versus the Inner Circle feud, and sort of the idea that Hangman very much doesn't want to be associated with the Elite, but sort of keeps getting drug into all of these type of things. So it was very interesting in that aspect. And as Phil said, I think they did a good job at advancing a couple of storylines, maybe establishing a couple of new storylines for the women's division, which is something we've been asking for. So overall, just a really good episode at progressing where things are supposed to be going, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I was pretty impressed with the show, but I'm with you guys. There wasn't anything that necessarily stood out as some type of huge or maybe even like game-changing moment in the show in terms of we were talking about maybe Matt Hardy showing up, something like that. I mean, that's something we've been anticipating for weeks now, and they're still sort of pushing this Dark Order thing out a little bit. So I'm just surprised, I guess, that we're coming into yet another week after the pay-per-view and still just nothing really super crazy happening.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, a good enough show. Let's go ahead and jump right into things. AJ, I cannot find your notes anywhere right now, so can you go ahead
They're
and
in
just...
AEW Dynamite discussion.
Oh, my God. All right. So we started off this week's episode of Dynamite with highlights from last week's situation of the Inner Circle and Jon Moxley. From there, they talk about how Hangman and a mystery partner are going to face Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho. So this is why this totally doesn't resonate in my mind. This really didn't... It seemed like they were leading up to something, but then it was so forgetful in the moment.
Yeah.
So we have Hangman in the back talking with the Young Bucks, just sort of... And Tony Schiavone's just saying, you know, my partner tonight will be a mystery. He's not really announcing it. And yet they sort of anticlimactically announce who his partner ends up being. So it was just really strange, and sort of why this whole situation wasn't very standout, I would say. But then the first match on the show was definitely something that stood out in terms of something we were excited for. We have Cody taking on Ortiz. What were your guys' thoughts just on this match overall?
Good match. Really solid work from both guys. I always like seeing Ortiz or Santana get to wrestle in a singles match, so that was cool. As far as the match quality goes, I would say it was pretty good.
It was a decent match. I thought it went a little too long. It was a strange choice for the opening segment, because usually they like to start things off with a bang. And when the card was announced last week, I didn't really see this as a match that would get as much time as it did. It ended up getting like 15 minutes of time.
No, it was 11 minutes.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
it
with
wasn't too
entrances and
long.
all that, it rounds up. It's still a lot of time to dedicate to a match. We're going, and I know basically who's going to win. Not to say that it was bad or anything. It was good. I don't know, man. I feel like for some reason, for me, Cody matches resonate differently just because his style is so different.
Yeah,
Old
I think I
school
just sort of
wrestling style.
with Cody, I just
That
sort
is
of anticipate a little bit more or want something a little bit more brought to the table, and it seems like he's a guy who really holds back in the traditional sense of he's gonna save his really big stuff for his big matches and just stay like very simple.
totally agree with that because a lot of his single matches with lesser known talents, like a match like this, a lot of the times they don't really like resonate with fans. Like the only one I can think of is the Darby one, and that's just partially, I think, because Darby is a big enough star on his own. Like he's
Even like
created
Sammy
enough
G?
information for himself. Not really. Like even as you say it now, I remember it, but I don't really remember anything about it.
Hmm.
There wasn't really standout moments from it.
Yeah, and this one, it's not like it was a pay-per-view level match where we're expecting them to seriously go way above and beyond. And they did sort of introduce a new aspect into what's going on with Cody, where we have Lance Archer revealed as Jake Roberts' associate.
Definitely interesting.
So that was good, and it was an interesting, probably one of the more interesting parts of the show, and they got it out of the way very quickly.
Yeah.
Which the only thing that really sat in my mind was why couldn't you have done something with Archer in the beginning if you weren't going to use it as some major reveal? But I also appreciate the fact of doing it very simply if it is Archer, because there's no reason to tease that for a whole nother week.
Yeah, I agree. I just thought it was a bit underwhelming the way they did it because he's just watching the match. And I know he almost jumps the rail and Jake tells him to back off, but I was expecting an Archer debut to be more something like attacking Cody post match or just something big to show him that he's imposing and dominant to a lot of fans who haven't seen Archer in a long time. And yeah, he's been in Japan, and yeah, he's a lot better than he was, but a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people only remember him as Lance Hoyt or Vance Archer. So I feel like it's the best way to have done a debut with him is to make him look dominant from the get-go.
Yeah, man, that's the problem I had with this debut is that he came out for the first time on television to like little to no fanfare. Nothing. He didn't really do anything. Yeah, they established he's with Jake the Snake, but when I'm thinking of like an impactful debut, usually the person that's making the impactful debut is getting physical. Maybe their theme song plays. You get an idea of their character. Like if Kira had been here, who is my girlfriend and she watches, she has very little understanding of the history of the sport, so she doesn't know who Lance Archer is. And I've got to sit there and explain to her that this guy's a big deal, but he doesn't come across as a big deal for somebody who doesn't know who he is. He's just some dude coming out like, oh, it's just another wrestler coming out. He wasn't like made different in any way, I guess, in the immediate sense.
Yeah, I think the one thing about him is he just is larger than life. So that thing
There
about
is
him
that,
being
yeah.
so much bigger than maybe even the rest of the roster, it does
But he was
help
sitting
him.
down, which kind of hurt that.
Yeah, and like so, I guess I'm only thinking of the moment where he's about to go over the rail, and that was a very short moment, but I feel like that helped a little bit. You know what I mean? So. But nonetheless, it was good to get him on screen and do something with him. Like I said, you don't have to kill Cody right away or first thing. Especially if you're building up to that match next week. It just sort of adds that intrigue. They haven't touched. They haven't really done anything. Why is Jake so invested in this guy? But we know who the guy is, and we're not going into next week thinking it's going to be Brody. And I think that's maybe a reason why they revealed it as being Archer now, just because they don't want people getting that thought going into it.
Andrew, I really had the thought of if this is all his debut was going to be, why couldn't it have happened last week?
Yeah,
when he was advertised on the show.
That was definitely something that was going through my mind multiple times. Like when I'm watching this segment, it is why couldn't this have happened last week? I do get you wanted to do that Jake Roberts promo. You wanted to sort of make that maybe stand out viral moment for it, but it did. It stood out a little bit. and it made things draw out. But we had the idea of Archer debuting last week, so why couldn't he have been there in some capacity? I think the only thing that would make the most sense to me would just simply be the fact that, if Archer's there, you would expect physicality. You would expect something to happen. So if you're not going to deliver on that physicality, the best thing you can do is just not have him there, only have his mouthpiece there.
Agree. I very much agree.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. We did lose you for a second, but we're just talking about the whole situation with Archer. But it was a good debut. I'm glad to see that. It was a decent enough match, but I'm with Phil in the fact that it was a little bit long. I thought that Ortiz, there's only so much you can do with him versus Cody. So when it's such a limited match, you don't necessarily want to see it go that long. Maybe 8 minutes would have been a comfortable time for these guys, but nonetheless, decent enough. Post-match, we get an attack from all of the Inner Circle. Matt Jackson runs out. Kenny Omega runs out. They both get attacked by the Inner Circle. So this was a decent little brawl. And then we cut to the backstage where apparently Nick Jackson is dying because Chris Jericho has smashed what was that? A garage door on his forehead. He literally is bleeding out of the mouth. It was an interesting visual. It wasn't the worst thing or the dumbest thing I've seen, but it was a little bit like corny because the way the injuries didn't necessarily match up with what you were looking at, I guess.
Yeah.
I got the thought, but it was just a little silly.
Oh, it was silly for Kira because she had just come home from work when this happened. She saw Cody jump into his car in his full wrestling gear, and for some reason that was really funny for her, and it was really funny for me. And then she was like criticizing the EMTs because they had their hair down, and she was like, "I don't think you can do that." So, all in all, the whole segment was just kind of like. It was kind of funny and carny in
it was
a
like
way.
half baked in a sense where it was just like you and in a very old school type of situation where he's very beat up but it's modern, so you could tell like it's a little bit fake and silly. But nonetheless, I like the idea of him running off in his full gear. I mean, it's silly to see some guy at a hospital in his full gear, but he's also not going to take the time to change if his best friend, or brother in Matt's case, is all beat up. So,
Hurt.
But
very good point.
So, but it is funny for someone watching from the outside, or just in general, if you think about it. But it was cool and a decent, like, they set it up fine. Where it was kind of funny to me was the fact that these guys come back at the end of the show. Didn't love that part. If you're gonna do all of this, having them return felt very silly to me. Like then it gets a little extra carny if you add in that at the end.
Especially because they didn't get the upper hand at the end. That was the weirdest part to me. They came back and they still lost.
Yeah, exactly. So, but a good enough opening segment. There wasn't too much to complain about, that's for sure, and a good way to, again, set the tone with this whole situation with the Inner Circle. Jericho very much focused on Cody and his squad as opposed to Mox, which is good.
Yeah. Good way to build up blood and guts, which is what you want. And it was a solid build. A little hokey, yeah, but it was solid to get the point across and to write off Nick Jackson that we need a fifth man, because I'm guessing he's not going to be back in time for blood and guts. I'm guessing that's the gimmick here, or maybe he's going to be a big surprise that he returns. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming this is a way to write him off because they, like we said, they made it a little heavy-handed with the injury, and we know that his wife is pregnant and he's waiting for her to give birth. So I'm thinking this is a way to maybe include Hangman in the match or somebody else. I don't know.
Well, we do have Hangman already announced for the match.
Okay, so Hangman's in. So maybe Mox then.
Yeah, maybe Mox. I honestly think it's just a way to get him off of television until then. But then you do the big surprise of him magically overcoming the death that he's succumbed to. And Nick's a good wrestler, man, and can put on a good show. So you give him that opportunity. You give him that opportunity to overcome the odds in a sense. I think that would be interesting. And you never know, they might try to, if Matt's not to be the exalted one, maybe they incorporate him in this whole situation. They also have the option of just tossing Dustin in there. So that's what scares me of pulling Nick out. I get the thought of putting Dustin in there and him having a history with the type of match, but I'm good. I like where we're at now, and I would totally be interested in Nick doing that overcoming the odds thing. So But from there, we get a good build to finally a woman's feud that I think AJ and I will be interested in. I'm not too sure how Phil will feel about this, but we have Nyla and Bea Priestley beating Hikaru Shida and Chris Statlander in about 10 minutes. The match itself didn't necessarily stand out a whole lot to me, but there wasn't a whole lot of bad that stood out either. So in terms of the women's division, where they're not all the best, this is a good thing. And overall, post-match, we get Priestley attacking Nyla after they win this match. So a setup there for a championship match down the line. I like this.
I love this. I was super into it. And maybe it's because I just like Bea Priestley a lot, which is totally fair because I do want to hear what Phil has to say. But Bea Priestley is amazing in the ring, and I didn't expect her to be coming for a title shot, let alone back in America for a long period of time. So this is great to me. And they were really putting over that, she's in Japan a lot. She moved there permanently. And then this turn happened. So it really took me by surprise. I love this up and down.
I liked the match. I really did. I thought everybody looked good at certain points of the match. There were a few spots where Bea Priestley kind of messed up a little bit, which it was odd at the end where she kind of looked the worst and ended up. It seemed like she was going to get the program with Nyla Rose for the title. But in my opinion, I really don't think it's going to lead to a singles match between the two of them, just because everybody in this match looked good. Hikaru Shida has been the number 1 contender or the number 2 contender for like 2 months. I feel even though she got pinned today, she looked real good. I thought she was the standout person from this match.
Yeah.
I really wanted to see her and Nyla have a one-on-one match, but she got pinned by Nyla, so I don't think a one-on-one contest is coming that way either. And Statlander looked good too. I really think that the truth is, I think there should be a 4-way match between these people. I don't know what Rio's doing. If I was booking it, Rio would be involved, but it doesn't seem like she seems like she just lost the title. She's not going to get a rematch. She's not going to be in the picture. So these are the 4 people that are hovering around the title picture right now. You've got Big Swoll and Britt Baker on the outside, but they're doing their own thing. So
I like it. I like that there's something going on with the women, that there's something being focused on. I do think that they will probably try and set something up with maybe Bea versus Hikaru next week, or even Statlander as a number 1 contenders match, and then we get a women's title match at Blood and Guts, because I have a strong feeling you're going to try to stack the bottom half of that card too.
Yeah.
Just to keep that high rating. That's something me and AJ really think they're pushing for that week, is just potentially the highest rating of AEW's history. So, and this is kind of the build towards something with that, and I would be really interested to see something like that, especially with Nyla's done all right, Bea's done all right, and I'm with Phil too in a sense. If they get a 4-way going, it wouldn't be bad. The thing I like about Hikaru not necessarily getting that singles match yet is it gets a chance for more people to get on board to the fact that she's really that good, and if you feel like it builds a little more every week, because I feel like we might not have even heard Phil say it as much as he did just now, in the sense of that Hikaru is like one of the top number 1 aces in the women's division now, and it just becomes more evident every week, and that helps, especially not forcing that title match before, where if you're not going to have her win, then she loses, and that doesn't help. So you keep building this up, and I think that's done well for her as well. So I think Bea is a good face for to just reintroduce to the division. She's someone that AJ and I like a lot, and she's just she has something different about her. Like, it's very realistic, aggressive, maybe the asshole type style of wrestling almost. But
I would say Kira was very impressed with her, because it seemed like she was working a little stiff, and there was the slaps were a little louder. I don't know if that's just
no, she works stiff. You're right.
How the show goes, but her stuff looked very realistic, and she took note of it. Just another reason why I don't think Priestley is it's going to be Priestley and Rose is, again, because she's just been off TV for so long.
Mm-hmm.
To even after the turn, to put her in that position.
Yeah, and it's a weird type of turn, because is who, like, in AEW is very much not a face and heel company in a lot of ways, but this is a very big evidence of that because she turned healer because Nyla's really not.
When it happened, I was so confused. I had like looked away from the TV for 1 second, and I hear her reacting to my girlfriend reacting to what had happened, and I looked up and I was like, "What happened?" She turned on her. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised too and caught off guard by it, but I was very excited when I noticed what was going on just because I am such a big fan of B. So it's cool to see, and just the fact that you said that she is so aggressive and has that style about her, I could really see them almost going forward with that just to give us that type of match on the Blood and Guts show where they just kind of beat the shit out of each other and be someone who would be able to take that from Nyla, who might have a little bit of a strength advantage, but it would produce a very interesting match. So I think we'll definitely know for sure by next week. I think Phil might get some type of number one contenders match, and maybe the number one contenders match will come on Blood and Guts, but I have a strong feeling that they're going to want to do something with the women's division on that show. You want to showcase that division and the champion especially on a show where you're going to have a lot of eyes on it.
Yeah.
After this match, we get a Chris Daniels video package. He's then mocking the Dark Order, which is just, I didn't love it. I hated it, honestly. Like, I don't care for Christopher Daniels too much at this stage, especially doing this type of thing. And I thought the Dark Order is supposed to be a big deal, but it feels like every step of the way we just step on this gimmick as much as we can.
I didn't mind it as much as you did. I didn't necessarily like it, though. But I thought it was interesting a way to announce the stipulations or whatever that he's going to be wrestling or presumably wrestling both of them in a singles match. But I kind of got swept under the rug when
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, I kind of got swept under the rug because they're announcing the Exalted One anyways. So it kind of felt like, what's the point of this?
Maybe it's going to happen. Maybe he wrestles one of them on Dark tonight and the other one next week on Dynamite, and we get the Exalted One after that.
I think they're gonna screw over the Rochester crowd, and it's gonna be a fake out. Dark, the Exalted One, isn't gonna be revealed for real, and we're gonna be subjected to Christopher Daniels single matches for the next 2 weeks. But I didn't
hope you get
care
2
for
Christopher
it that
Daniels
much.
matches next week.
I didn't care for it that much. Kira thought this was hilarious for some reason. Every time he switched over to his SCU gear with a microphone and said Dark Order sucks, she popped. I don't understand why. She had a great time with it. She said at one point, he's so quirky. I like him.
The thing about it is, if you were going to do this in the way that I'm imagining it, which, like I said, you do one match on Dark, one match on Dynamite, why couldn't you have squeezed one in tonight somewhere? And I'm not saying they had a ton of time tonight. I don't necessarily know what I might or might not have. Oh, I would have cut the Britt Baker thing. But anyways.
For sure, brother.
But like, why? It seems like it's going to be something that's very rushed because we're going to talk about Dark later, but I did just look up the matches. Daniels is facing Grayson on Dark. So I have to assume that then you're going to get Daniels versus Uno at Rochester, and then you'll get the reveal. So... Why did you rush it, I guess, is my thing. It's just the weird. This would have been an interesting thing in a way, especially like if the Dark Order had more wins, it would be better, but it's still a little bit interesting in the way that you're building up to it, leading it to a couple more weeks. I would have preferred a Grayson versus Daniels match at some point last week just to have something to build to this because last week we felt like there was almost nothing.
Yeah. Totally agree. And moreover, if you're going that route where apparently Daniels is facing Grayson and then obviously he'll be facing Uno next week, why announce that the Exalted One is debuting next week? Why not just have him debut? I don't know. I guess you want
not
more
just
eyes
have him
on
debut? Yes. But you're right because otherwise people might not think that he's coming next week. So
yeah.
It's an interesting way of going about things, but we shouldn't spend too much time on that promo because it really wasn't a long thing and not something they really emphasized too much, just a way to establish his deal with that. But after that, we got a pretty sweet 6-man with the Butcher, the Blade, and MJF taking on the Jurassic Express. The Jurassic Express falling short in this one, but nonetheless getting a decent opportunity to shine here. Jungle Boy especially looking really good, but still fallen short. So it didn't necessarily make up for the loss, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have MJF go over. You can't have him lose here, but it sucks that Jurassic Express are the ones getting stepped on to do that. And
And
the ending was weird because it was Marco Stunt like calling shots and telling everybody what to do and then fucking up the match and losing. And it's like, why did Marco Stunt just do that? But aside from that, it was a pretty good match and I liked it.
it was a good match. I was also confused with AJ with Marco pushing everybody around, calling shots. I really didn't think too much of it though. I just thought it was weird. Man, it was apparent in this match that you gotta. I have nothing against Marco Stunt, but you gotta limit his exposure in this group at this point. You gotta do it. It's too easy to have him eat a pinfall at this point. Jurassic Express's record is so bad. It's almost irredeemably bad.
Yeah.
Jungle Boy, his hot tag tonight made him look very good. He was very fluid in the things that he was doing, and it seems like he's actually advanced himself since AEW first started, and that team was actually really hot, one of the hottest acts in the whole company. Man, it's just so easy for when they're in a 6-man tag situation or tag situation just for Marco to eat that pin.
Yeah.
And have the Jurassic Express be these underdog characters, but at a point, man, it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think they're almost maybe taking note to that. Maybe this Marco pushing them around thing is a little bit of the beginning to something we might see or not see coming in a turn on Marco, and that would be the only way for it to make sense if he starts doing these things as a little bit of a dickhead, trying to push them around. I would be a little bit bummed to see Marco and Jungle Boy split because I think they are such a fun unit. But you're right in the fact that they almost abuse Marco being in that group in the sense of they're like, well, he can afford to take the pin. He can afford to take the pin because he's the most realistic guy to lose. Instead of looking at the fact that Luchasaurus is huge and they should be winning a lot more, and Jungle Boy is way over and they should be winning a lot more. So I think maybe at this point, cutting Marco loose is like a means of, well, this is why we didn't push them, but we're about to push them, so it's going to be time. And I'm not saying that's for sure going to happen, but just based upon the fact that you both got the idea of it off of the finish and the finishing sequence, it gives me the idea that it could be something they're planting the seeds for. That something like that is usually something they would do intentionally. Marco hasn't been necessarily going out of his way to be a bossy character up until this point.
Yeah, you have a point there. And I wouldn't mind seeing that happen because like Phil said, it's too much at this point, and it's way too easy to fall into that trap, which they've fallen into so many times that it might be time to have Marco Stunt do something else.
Then I wouldn't mind him maybe being some type of manager to two really, really big dudes. Like he just, for some random reason, is just bossing around two big ass dudes. Because otherwise, how do you make any sense of Marco teaming with people? Like, yes, he's talented, but it's tough to really get by his size, especially with how they've treated him. And it would be hard to get anyone to really believe in that outside of the underdog story that you can only do one time. So,
Yeah.
But I'm curious where it's going. I hope that it's going somewhere. So. And then I think that we have Darby Allin going somewhere with the Inner Circle because after that we get a replay of Darby's fight with Sammy G, and then we do some video package of him dressed up as Jericho and taking Sammy G throwing him into a body bag and dragging him around. Yeah, this was such an
what the fuck was this?
It was different, but I don't know. It's weird because the Inner Circle has so much going on.
I like the fact that Darby Allin is allowed to do things like whatever he wants, but it's weird, like you said, because the Inner Circle is doing so much right now to have him do this at this point. And I guess I get it. You want to keep the Sammy G feud going, which is cool, but it's a little odd.
Yeah, just because, like I said, the Inner Circle is busy and, you know, Darby doesn't really get involved when there's a reason to possibly get involved. So, which is fine. There's other storylines going on, but with all of this happening, him going out of his way to make a video, you'd think he would take any opportunity he had to beat the shit out of Sammy to do it. But yeah,
the only justification I would have for it is that he is Nick Jackson's replacement.
That's maybe
It's in the match.
that would be a solid replacement too.
Exactly. It seems like the match type that he would thrive in, and it makes sense if Nick Jackson's wife doesn't give birth or like whatever happens, like whatever reason they need to substitute him because they felt the need to potentially write him off tonight. So who knows if they're going to bring him back for that big climactic show.
It just makes me feel like if they were going to do that, and it would almost be a really interesting story to do that and to have done it, but then you would have probably had Darby do the save at the end of the night rather than Matt and Cody. Which I get. You need to even the numbers, but I feel like Darby would have been involved in some way, but maybe not yet. Maybe they're waiting to get him involved until next week. But that's something I would be really interested in and would like. So
yeah, I agree with that. If you were going to do it, you would have Darby come out, but that's an interesting idea.
Well, just because, and the reason I would have had him come out and sort of make the save is because they were putting over the idea to start the main event match with Hangman and saying he wanted to be like Darby and fight the Inner Circle by himself. So then you have Darby come out and make that save and do a stare down with Hangman. You don't have to do that right away, but you set yourself up for something with those two down the line too and have the little seeds planted of that right there. But overall, I like that Darby was focused on in any way, and his aesthetic always works for him. So after that, we get something that doesn't always work for me. Britt Baker interviews. I don't totally understand why we need Britt focused on every week, but as I was getting ready to tweet something of that nature out, we have Big Swoll interrupt Britt in the middle of this interview, and it made more of an impact for Swoll to come out than it would have if I didn't really have this faith in Britt, or not faith, but hate for Britt, I would say, and hate for her promos, because when Swoll came out, I was like, thank God, anyone but Britt to cut this up. So in a sense, I get what they've done, because making Britt such a heater has helped a character like Swoll. But otherwise, the segment was a little weird, especially because they're very much referencing the fact that Britt's husband, Adam Cole, works for NXT. She then talks about Swoll's boyfriend, Cedric Alexander. Swoll then says, "I'm married, baby," which is then the obvious reference to Cole. So it was strange, a strange way to build these two having a match. It was very much of a viral line in the sense of it got a big pop and it probably made the rounds on social media. But outside of that, once you really take it for what it is, it's a little bit weird.
It is a little bit weird. And it was kind of weird because, like you said, you could have just had Swoll break this up. And Swoll was doing good on the mic up until that point where we're going, our husband's boyfriend are in WWE. And it's like, okay. Because otherwise, she was sounding good. She was sounding strong and confident. It was like, all right, I'm cool with Swoll beating the shit out of her. Because that's what you want to happen at this point. But yeah, it was kind of weird how they just ended with those snide remarks and the coffee and everything. But whatever.
Yeah, just the whole interaction with Britt and Tony, it never really gets over too much for me anyway.
No,
But like I said, having Swoll come out, that this whole build up between Tony and Britt has made me appreciate Swoll a little bit more. It was just the way that they capitalized on things that I didn't totally love, but it was a good build to something. I like where they're going. I like that this is something we're building to, because that can be fun and that can be positive for Swoll, like real positive. You don't have to go directly where we thought they were with Nyla versus Swoll right now. You sort of build up each one in their own realms, and you can get Swoll over with this. I definitely think so.
I agree.
Any thoughts on this segment, Phil?
Like every week, I wasn't a big fan of the Britt Baker promo initially. Liked the fact that Swoll came out, though at the same time, I haven't really connected with Swoll yet on like an in-ring level, because I feel like I have to have that before I really get behind somebody. Yes, yeah, she seemed pretty good on the microphone. I would like to see a little more in the in-ring sense, but then again, I haven't actually seen her in a singles match with somebody who I believed could beat her and she could have like a really good match with. So, I mean, untapped potential. I don't really know what kind of potential she has,
Yeah.
but this segment kind of was like I have to wait and see before I have a real opinion on it kind of thing.
The thing I
Mhm.
will say is if this leads to like a Britt versus Swoll match next week even, you might be a lot more interested in it now just because they've
For
given
sure.
you some type of build to it, which is something I can definitely appreciate.
100%.
And like I don't know, yeah, it's just a good way to help Swoll, I think, overall, and that's something that I'm down with, and it creates a matchup that again, if they didn't do this, Swoll versus Baker, I'd be like, oh, Baker's going over, very simple. This adds a lot more intrigue to it. I'm a lot more thinking that Baker or Swoll has an opportunity to pick up a win here. So
Yeah.
the next match on the card, I definitely didn't have a lot of faith in Joey Janela and Private Party picking up the victory. The match itself, they did a little bit to sell me on the potential of some type of crazy upset, but no, we have the Death Triangle, that being Pac and the Lucha Brothers going over Janela and Private Party. This match was really, really fun, though, and probably my favorite match of the night.
Yeah, totally agree there. This was a fantastic match up and down. They killed it. They got the crowd really hot for this, even though it was Janela and Private Party who haven't really been on TV in a while, which was really cool to see. And the fans were hot for Janela too, even though he hasn't really been around. And they had a lot of cool spots, a lot of cool moments. This one stands out in my mind is the only awkward one is whenever Janela had Pac on the apron for like a minute, was just holding him there while they did stuff, and Pac didn't do anything. But other than that, I can't really think of a bad spot in that match.
They capped it off well, though, with him doing that Death Valley driver, and you get what they were aiming for with him doing it on the apron and everything, the setup of it, but it was very awkward with how long he stood up there. But they did a good job at showcasing him and Private Party again in a way in this six-man where, yeah, they lost, but they probably came out looking better in defeat than if they weren't featured at all. It's obviously not as good as if they had picked up a victory, but that would have been a little bit confusing in and of itself, despite the fact that they looked really good in this match. At one point, I would like to see them continue teaming together, Private Party and Janela, just because at one point Mark Quinn goes up and they like remixed their move where Quinn throws the guy off the top ropes. Janela catches him, hits him with a sweet Death Valley driver, and it was just so perfectly done that I want to see them continue working. So I
totally
like that.
there.
I like that especially. And again, I love Joey matches, so they did good by him.
Yeah,
I will
they
agree.
definitely did.
I'll agree that this match was really good. I liked it. Kept me entertained. Random thought that I had during this match. I really appreciate that guy from the Private Party doesn't do the high-pitched scream anymore. And if he does, he doesn't do it as much. I don't notice it.
He did
because
do something
it was
like
awful.
that today, but it wasn't that. And yeah, someone had to have talked to him and been like, dude.
It's like I noticed it today, and I watched Dark last night, and they were on it too, and he didn't do that either, and I didn't notice it because every time I forget that he does it until he does it, and then it really severely bothers me. But no, it hasn't happened the past few times. Makes them a lot more likable.
Yeah, and well, shout out to him for being able to finally change that up.
Yeah,
and
man, self-awareness is a good thing to have.
Well, and the reason I say that is because I know on social media someone had tweeted at him about when are you gonna stop doing that, and he was like, never, and I was like, bro, please, because I like you guys a lot, like especially, and hey, that's something maybe he could bring it back if they want to be heels and he wants to get heat
throwback.
because it's something that really makes you kind of just like irritated about what he's doing, especially because you see other wrestlers do the same type of shit and not go screaming about it. So
it's funny when Chuck Taylor does it because it makes him look like a bitch, but that's not what he's doing.
Yes, exactly. It's just like it's almost like a cry for attention, essentially, is all it feels like to me, because you're not really doing anything. You want to make sure the crowd is focused in on you, so you're gonna just make this high pitched noise and do a big spot. And it's annoying. That's all it really is at the end of the day. But overall, a good match. We have the Death Triangle win, and they tried locking in this move called the Death Triangle, which was all types of fucked up.
I have
And
It
no
was
idea what
so
this was.
horrible.
it's gonna
What
end
the
up on
fuck
an
was
episode.
that?
It'll end up on an episode of Botchamania for sure, just because of how focused
Pentagon
in
like
they
chains
were.
a submission midway.
Oh
Like-
man, you had to look at Ray Phoenix. He was, I don't know what he was doing. He was doing
couldn't
a
get it
face
locked
stretch,
in. He
and
couldn't
then he
get
was
it
doing a
locked in.
cross face, and
he started
like,
biting his face.
The only person that looked like he knew what he was doing was Pac, and he was like in the center, and he
Yeah.
was doing like the one submission, and the two Lucha Brothers on the side of him were just fucked up,
Yeah,
like
it
doing
was-
3 submissions, and
It was rough,
was
and
bad.
we have the best friends come out and make the save with Orange Cassidy. They didn't really do anything, but yeah, this is it's a fun build to a good 6-man down the line. So, and
Yeah.
hell, maybe it's
Yeah.
a chance to get Orange's
Which is,
first
I
win
mean,
down the line.
it is building up to a match next week at Rochester if it does happen.
Yeah, so that's good.
Looking forward
shit,
to
man.
that.
That's very good. I like it. They're building a good build to just a regular match on Dynamite. You know, that Rochester show. If it wasn't right before the Blood and Guts one, it would feel like they're building to that one.
Yeah.
It's good.
So that's awesome. After this, we get the reveal of who Hangman Page's mystery partner is going to be. We have Dustin Rhodes. He's getting interviewed. They talk about the fact that he wasn't in his gear earlier. He's all of a sudden in his gear, and he's got to get his face paint on just to be a mystery partner. He goes all out every time, no matter what. But yeah, he's gonna do some cowboy shit and be Hangman's partner. I didn't love this because I would have just. I mean, the thing I will give him is it's a very anticlimactic surprise. So give it to me early on in the show, so I'm not like, oh, it's just Dustin. But yeah, and the weird thing is I didn't get the vibe that Hangman wanted to be by himself early on in the show. So
No, I didn't either.
So
And in the match, he was telling Dustin, "I have a partner."
yeah, so that's just strange. It's very strange. I would almost assume that commentary and him were like in sync, but in a weird way of trying to tell the same story of he's lying to Dustin because he does just want to be alone. But man, it was confusing.
Yeah, it was super confusing. It was definitely weird. I didn't like it at all. I like you said, I'm glad they put this first, because I would have been way more pissed if just Dustin Rhodes came out and that was the big partner. So hats off, I guess. Cowboy hats off. I didn't like it.
I actually really liked it. It made a lot of sense to me. Okay, so when it first happened, I was disappointed for like 20 seconds, but then I realized that it makes total sense into the story that they're telling, that Adam Page has basically no control over his own career, or at least it seems that way, because he's part of the elite, and he's having decisions made for him left and right, and this is just another one of them that he didn't actually get to choose his partner. Dustin said, "I'm going to be your partner whether you like it or not," and then he did. And yes, the story goes that no matter who it is, Adam Page has chemistry with the person that he's teaming with, like
you know
they did
what,
when
Philly, you're selling me on this.
they did in the match when they did the double fucking flips, moonsaults, whatever, onto their respective opponents. It's just another step in the story that they're
I hear
telling
ya.
there.
Yeah, you know what? I've been swayed. I agree with you. I didn't even
Because when
consider
it first was announced and Dustin was like, "I'm going to be his partner no matter what," I was like, man, that sucks. Wow, what a disappointment. And then I was like, well, I mean, it makes sense, because Hangman didn't look very excited that Dustin was his partner. He looked like he didn't really want him there, and neither did I.
Yeah,
But he was there.
The reason that it was so weird, especially in this segment only, because like at the beginning of the show, Hangman's like, "Yeah, the man I'm teaming with, I have a history with." And then we have this, and I'm like, oh, yeah, he does have a history of teaming with Dustin. I was like, shit, it is just, so it wasn't until the match started where commentary's talking about how Hangman wanted to do things by himself that I really started to realize exactly what Phil's saying, and the fact that Hangman just keeps getting dicked around, and the fact that he doesn't want to be involved in all of this stuff with the elite, and he still keeps getting drug into being involved with the elite, no matter how many chances he wanted to have a mystery partner, and maybe he did have one lined up.
They're even selling it on Twitter that he is drug time again into the elite shit.
Yeah, well,
And
they
it's
did
not
it on.
necessarily like he wants to be there.
They did it on being the elite the other day too, and I know that's we criticize them for we don't want to force people to follow that. So it's good that they're telling the story in the sense we can understand it without being the elite. But if you tune into being the elite, you get that underlying effect of he goes and he's like bitching out Cody and Matt at the end of the episode because of just being drug into their shit and this problem that they have, and he's tired of it, and it's so cool. And then the next thing you know, boom, he's announced for the Blood and Guts match, and he's drug right back into it after saying he was done. So I loved that little build to it. And again, this is another aspect of that I didn't really take in until Phil said that.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't either.
And from there, we continue the search for Spears. Have you guys sent in your videos to be Sean Spears tag team
I really
partner?
should.
You should, especially considering the fact you're the podcast's #1 Sean Spears fan.
I might be the #1 Sean Spears fan, period.
Yeah, so I think you should do it if for no other reason than to be featured on next week's episode of Dynamite, because they showcased quite a few people on the show. So
man, this was gruesome, man. This video package of potential stars was gruesome.
Brutal.
The dude, one of the guys, was just talking normally, and
I already know who you're talking about.
Kira was like, "What a creep," and I thought about it for like 10 seconds, and I was like, "Yeah, that dude was kind of like unsettling."
Is it the guy who was like, "You should train me"?
Yeah, yes, and he had like very dark eyes. And another guy who was very creepy was the man in the truck with all the pallets in the back, and he was smashing his head off the truck
yes,
wall.
that was very crazy.
What was that? Who's that man?
I want him to be the partner.
The only guy I liked out of these videos was the one who was like kind of in shape, and he was like, "You want someone who's in shape?
Yeah, he might be
click with you and you." Yeah, that guy gets my vote so far because everybody else was very, very upsetting.
I have a strong feeling this is going absolutely nowhere.
This has gone on for way too long. Like this isn't just starting with this hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
He's been looking for a partner forever and just been ass. So
that's why.
Is it going to end with him being a tag team with whoever he used to be a tag team with in like way back in the day? Because I don't understand what the purpose of all of this is. Like, I don't understand why we're dragging this out. I don't think and now focusing on it on the main show, not just Dark. So
that's why last week that was my must-see moment of Dark's main event when he teamed with Brandon Cutler, and Brandon Cutler looked like a beast. And then he stood at the top of the ramp and looked at Brandon Cutler making his hot tag, almost came back, but didn't. I thought that it might be leading to Brandon Cutler, but apparently no.
So good nobody that we got to hear about it twice. So anyways, the next segment was actually much better than that segment, and all it was them running down what's going to happen next week. So next week we have the Lucha Brothers taking on the Best Friends. That's exciting. The Exalted One will be revealed. This was an interesting announcement about an announcement. And then we're going to have the Elite taking on the Inner Circle in a trios tag team match where the winning team gets the blood and guts advantage on the line. So this is important, and actually very important main event, and they were strict on not announcing who was representing which group.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, I was going to say how very vague of an announcement that was. We don't have anybody set in stone yet. I can only wonder that we're seeing if Kenny Omega's hand is healed. Because his
Cody's
timeline was like 1 to 2 week. What do you mean Cody's busy?
Isn't next week the Rochester show? Doesn't he have to face Archer next week? That's why I didn't understand this, because I thought they had announced he was having that match.
He's facing Archer next week? I didn't see that.
I thought that was the build with the Jake the Snake promo. I might have been off, but I thought that was my understanding was that he would be facing him in 2 weeks in Rochester. That's why people were so certain it would be Brody.
I didn't see that.
I didn't either.
So who knows? I mean, apparently they haven't announced the fact of the match. So maybe like I said, I'm probably totally off at this point. But yeah, nonetheless, a solid card announced for next week.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
For sure.
I'd be excited if I were you, Phil.
If the coronavirus doesn't cancel it.
What a hot take. Phil is just so so dead set on the fact that coronavirus is going to ruin his life. So
Yes.
that should be the title of the podcast, All Elite Corona Podcast. No, but yeah, so then they go over the blood and guts rules, which are very much like the traditional WCW rules, apparently, is what AJ's saying, and the fact that...
I just watched one, and they did the exact same thing, except with 8 guys.
Yeah, so we have 10 men in this match. 2 men will enter for 1 5-minute round. Every 2 minutes, another wrestler is going to enter the match. The match officially begins after all 10 have entered. The winning team is decided by submission or surrender, so someone's going to have to quit in order for this to end. Very interesting. Yes, but they did a good job at just laying the rules out for people, and it's good that they're starting this week because they'll probably announce them next week and then like 5 times on the actual Blood and Guts show, so people who are unfamiliar start to understand what it is.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to point out that at the beginning of the show, JR spoiled that it's going to be submission only, which made me laugh a lot.
I
But
don't think it will be.
well, I mean, that's what they're saying.
I think they're just poking fun at history. I don't really think that that's how it's going to be. I think if it was going to be that way, they would have announced it tonight with all the rules they announced.
They did.
That it's going to be submission only?
Yes.
Yeah, that it's submission or surrender only.
I missed that. That's what I saw. Surrender. That's what they're...
They said submission or surrender only, which is the same way WCW put it.
Man, don't like that. Not a lot of people in that match have a submission finish or believable submission finish.
Well, you got Jericho.
Yeah, that's one of 10.
That's why they started building up that figure 4 leg
figure
lock
4,
for
yeah.
Cody. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And then you have MJF. Oh no, he doesn't.
He's not in the inner circle or the elite. Phil, what are you talking about?
I just was reminded of his weird submission finish tonight. Like he doesn't usually
MJF
finish
is probably
off the
going to be
submission.
facing Mox, who ended up having an interview with Jim Ross actually right after this segment. I didn't take a whole lot away from this interview.
I didn't either.
You either get a lot from these Jim Ross interviews or a little, and this was very much just a little. You can't build too heavily into him versus the inner circle right now just because they have their own shit going on, so you write him off for a couple of weeks. But yeah, there just wasn't a lot to this interview, so it wasn't even a bad thing. It just there wasn't a lot to talk about, and he didn't even seem that mad that he got thrown like off a stage through some tables and shit. Like,
yeah, it wasn't bad by any means.
They reference WWE all the time. Why can't he reference the fact that he got Shield powerbombed?
I know, right? But it
serious.
wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. It was just a lot of nothing. It was a lot of nothing to build to, nothing going on. But again, I'm going to say it wasn't bad, and I'm glad they did something to keep Mox on TV, and putting him down with Jim Ross is a great way to do that.
Yes, yeah. I hope he's there next week because it made sense that he was off TV this week because he got destroyed. Even if he just runs in at the end or whatever at the end of next week, just to like have him there live would be a nice experience. Yeah, basically the only thing that this showed me was that Mox was still alive. He's alive.
Yeah, it just didn't really set up or build a whole lot, which again, you don't have a whole lot to build to. I wish he would have said something about MJF, even just very much in passing, like didn't give him any time. Just JR asked him about what MJF had to say about him last week, and Mox is like, I have no time for that guy. Who has he actually beaten legitimately without help? And then you have a means for MJF to really want to just beat the shit out of him and surprise him with Wardlow because he was just graced over by this champion who he's going to consider a scumbag anyway. So I think that you have to begin inserting that if you're going that route.
And weirdly, instead, he put his focus on Jake Hager, which was really odd to me. It was about at some point you and Jake Hager are destined to fight, and then he said Hager hit him harder than any other guy ever hit him, and it's like, why? Who wants to see this match?
Yeah, that feels like if it's not to set up a match, it's a very much a Jericho thing of put the other guy over as a monster no matter what. Don't super downplay him. But you're right. It feels that they're building to something like that, and that is not to say that I hate it, but it's definitely not what I'm looking for, especially right now and how they've built things. I really want something with MJF. Like That's where I'm at this point. That's what they've done, is they've created a situation where I want MJF in the title picture. So, and so I wish there would have been some type of reference, just again, like the breadcrumbs, very much the beginning, but we got none of that, which feels weird as much as they like to do things like that. From there, we go to the main event. Hangman and Dustin Rhodes defeating Chris Jericho and Sammy G. Hangman and Dustin, they have a history as a team. To begin the match, Hangman very much doesn't want Dustin there. As AJ said earlier, he's claiming he has a partner. The referee or the commentary are claiming that Hangman wants to do this alone. He wants to be like Darby. He saw Darby do it. He wants to be like that. So I get what they're pushing there. That's an interesting way to put it. I don't know. I like Hangman and Dustin winning here. I like a win for Hangman nonetheless. But it's weird to see Jericho and Sammy lose.
Yeah, it was a little weird, but I also don't mind it because it puts Hangman like what Phil was saying earlier, where it doesn't matter who Hangman's with, he always just kind of dominates and gets the win anyways. In that perspective, I really don't mind it, but it was a little odd. I honestly, I have more of a take on, or I have more interest in the post-match stuff, which I thought was a little all over the place.
Yeah, I thought that it was weird, and it wasn't that the Inner Circle lost here tonight, because I thought it was weird because Chris Jericho was involved, and usually he's very protective in terms of wins and losses. But at the same time, out of everybody in the Inner Circle, Sammy is the guy who takes the losses. He eats those pins. And
that's why his wins almost feel more important. It's a really weird thing with him that when he wins, it feels cool and like, oh shit, they're doing something with him, because he is the one who eats the losses.
Yeah, me and Kira both like him a lot. So I told her in the beginning of the match that he's probably going to be the one to eat the pin, because that's just how I felt.
Watching wrestling with Phil must be so awesome in 2020. Before every match, he tells you everything. He's mid-match calling the spots before they're going to happen. He wants to be the Tony Romo of professional wrestling commentary.
And I am, brother.
So, but I mean, I'm with you guys in the fact that the post-match was just wow. Like it wasn't, and not even a good wow, in the sense that they've done these big brawls with essentially these two groups plenty of times before, where it's come off so much better. The very last minute of it, I love Matt Jackson returning the favor of flipping off Hangman before getting clocked in the face with a chair, because I was just like, haha, Matt. Like, I'm such a Hangman guy at this point that I was like, that's what you get, Matt Jackson, for trying to be a fucking sarcastic dick. You just got smashed in the face. Like, so that was great, and essentially building to that was great, but it was weird seeing Cody come out, and Matt even, because when Cody came out, I was like, okay, don't have Matt come out, because that's his brother. Like, he's not going to leave his brother for literally no reason. Like, there's no reason for them to have come back. So that part was strange to me, but other than that, this was fun in the very end. So that's what is best about AEW, I guess, is that they can at least close out very well.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, the ending was cool, but the other stuff, like you said, was all over the place. It seemed weird that Matt Jackson came back from the hospital. It seemed weird to me that Cody even came back. It would have made a lot more sense to me if the Inner Circle just got one over, just beat them down, because they didn't have anybody on their side. They just took advantage of the fact that that Cody and Matt were gone, and they had the advantage. I thought that would have been the more heel thing to do. But I'm not going to nitpick that too much. But I mean, like you said, in the end, the Inner Circle hit them with the chair, and they got what they needed to get. So I'm not too upset with it, but it was definitely odd.
Yeah, I get the idea of wanting to build some type of dissension within the Elite as they're going into this very important pay-per-view level Dynamite in a couple weeks, and you want to build up that story as much as you can. And it's nice that they're taking the focus off of Hangman Kenny and placing it on Hangman Matt, because you can save Hangman Kenny for a little bit later down the line, and they're still obviously the tag team champions, so you don't want to have them implode too soon anyway. So I do like the build, but it's just felt like they've done this redundant blow off to Dynamite a lot, where it's becoming now, if they do it any too many more times with this big brawl, and it's going to be just a trope of AEW
Yes,
that they
I
finish
agree that
like
it's
that.
already become that level of a trope where every episode ends in a brawl and somebody's going up the ramp, pointing at the other person, saying, "I'm gonna get you next week," and some shit like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
The one thing I do appreciate is the Inner Circle consistently coming out on top the last couple weeks and the way that they've presented themselves, because it is presenting the story as it should. One unit is strong, and because they're strong, they're dominating. The other unit, very much not strong, because there's dissension within them, and no matter how many times they overcome those odds, they still get dropped.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting story in that fact, but it's become a trope of a way to end Dynamite that it's weird. And as we're talking about this, I understood why they did the Mox interview. It was literally just to say Mox won't be here, because that's why we have Mox not come out and try and exact his revenge on the Inner Circle. Because yeah, he doesn't have association or affiliations with the Elite. He does hate the Inner Circle enough to where you would assume he would have come out and done something. So you need that interview to let people know, hey, he's not, and this is why. But it's so funny that is essentially the only purpose of that interview.
Yeah.
But overall, the whole purpose of this Dynamite was just to continue building to the next couple weeks. It wasn't as fillery as other weeks, because we did get
Agreed.
some, like that. Those 2 6-mans were both good enough matches in themselves, especially that Janela one, that it didn't feel like a filler show because we got really quality wrestling on the show.
Yeah.
But overall, it doesn't necessarily go up there as one of the top Dynamites. It just sort of falls right in the middle. It's not bad, but not great.
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. And like you said, it's not a filler episode, and it has stuff to offer. There's a reason to watch this show and to keep you invested. And I think they did a good job of basically promoting the show that, like you and me were talking about, a show that they're probably going to try to make their biggest ratings winner. And so, if that's the case, then I would say they did a good job here.
For sure. Let's go ahead and bring back the segment we did at the close of so many shows, Wednesday night's main event. What was your guys' favorite match of the show?
I think it was honestly the Private Party Janela versus the Death Triangle.
Yeah, I think.
I like
Go ahead.
I like the women's tag match. Everybody got a chance to shine in a division that doesn't really get a lot of TV time.
Yeah, and I think that Phil probably just said that to pop his girlfriend because she's a big fan of the women's division and women's rights. But no, it is good to see the women's division get that showcase, so I'm with you there. But I have to agree with AJ in the fact that my match of the night, and it's just because I'm a Janela mark, really, was that 6-man, because Pac looks so great, the Lucha Brothers look so great, but the thing that was great about them, and something I almost complain about Cody a lot, is they brought these other 3 guys up to their level in terms of, we were, I mean, maybe not believing they could win, but they were hanging with them and looking good and doing so.
There.
So that was good, and that's what I appreciate from them. So yeah, that was probably my favorite match of the night, but I can understand Phil's thought process with that women's match. They definitely got an opportunity to shine that they normally don't get. And then our last segment, Phil's favorite segment, we're going to run through the dark matches that have happened tonight that will happen on next Tuesday's show. And on a scale of 1 to 5, we're going to gauge everybody's interest in these matches, 1 being not very interested, 5 being super interested. So the first match of the night, we have the Hybrid 2 taking on Michael Nakazawa and Brandon Cutler.
I'll give it a 2 because the Hybrid 2 are there.
I want to say 3. Brandon Cutler has been really good the past few weeks on Dark, and I really didn't like that dude at all. And the Hybrid 2, I like them too, so 3.
Shout out to Phil for being our resident Dark savant. Like, he watches every Dark and is
Man,
really
I watched last week's too.
that's what I'm saying. You're not someone
you
who
were
has
there
been
too.
who has been really into Dark or necessarily everything wrestling related, but even AEW is so good that they can pull someone who's not a diehard fan into watching Dark just to have another version of content to watch. So that's all I'm trying to say there. This one, I'm going to go with Phil in saying that it's a 3. I love the Hybrid 2. I'm not super behind Cutler, but the fact that Phil is saying he's been good on Dark,
he really has.
He's pushing me. He's pushing me to tune into this one just because, like I said, Jack Evans, he's done a great job since joining AEW.
Yeah,
he hasn't been showcased as much, but this is a team that should be showcased and should start to be focused on more. So I'd like to see that, even if it's only on Dark. This next one is interesting just because I did not expect to see this name on this card. We have Rio taking on Penelope Ford.
Okay, that's a fucking 4.
I'll say 3 again. I'll say 3.5. Two people that I wouldn't really
I
expect
really
to see
like
on the card.
Penelope Ford. I really think she's a great singles wrestler, and they don't utilize her enough. So I'm excited to see her get a chance against Rio of all people.
This is a big chance too. That's the perfect word for it because it's an opportunity to like. It's going to tell you if she can be good. It's not going to tell us if she's good, but if she can be good. Because if she has a bad match with Rio, it's safe to assume she probably can't be very good. But if she goes in and has a good fun match with Rio, as I assume she will, then it will be good and it'll be like Penelope's great, man. She has a lot of likable qualities about her. And the way that she performs in the ring, and she just like it's very much like Lita is what it reminds me of, the high flying like pretty woman doing crazy shit that you're like, oh, this is so cool. So if she wasn't paired with Kip, it would be even better. But this is an interesting match, so I'm with Phil in like 3.5 and almost 4 just because it's like shocking to see Rio involved. But why on Dark? But this is almost one of the ones that pushes me to tune into Dark.
Yeah, for sure.
And this one I know Phil is going to give a 5 to. We have Colt Cabana taking on Peter Avalon.
Go ahead, Phil.
Oh, man, that sounds like a piece of shit.
Jeez, it was so bad you peaked your mic. That's rough. But what are you gonna give it?
Yeah, it's a 1.
Yeah, man, I'm not big on this one. The one thing I'll give him, Phil hated that Colt Cabana segment on being the Elite, but I honestly loved it just because it was so off the wall and like nuts that I like now Colt just is going to be featured on something on AEW every week probably.
Dude,
just
could
because
you
of
imagine
the promo he cut. Like he's gonna be on Dark every week probably now because of
Do you
a
imagine
promo he
if
cut
that
on
match
being the
had
Elite.
happened next week?
So here's a thing that like almost like bums me out is this card is so much better than the card of even Dark I got last week. Not to say that the Rocky Mountain Pro wrestlers didn't perform, but instead of getting Abaddon, you're getting Rio. So and Colt Cabana, he's not too bad either. So that's fun. Our main event of Dark, something I talked about earlier, Stu Grayson taking on Christopher Daniels. What are you guys ranking it? Well, Phil, AJ, you didn't say what your Colt Cabana Peter Avalon take is.
Like a 1, yeah.
I'll give Colt a 1.5 just because of all of his podcasts that I enjoyed listening to, and he popped me on being the Elite this week. So 1.5, but Peter Avalon is ass. So, yep. And like I said, Stu Grayson versus Christopher Daniels. Thoughts?
I guess because of the build, I'll give it like a 3.5.
Yeah, this is much better build than Jimmy Havoc versus Luther, which I got on last week's episode of Dark for a live show. So yeah, I would say these Salt Lake City fans got a show. This is a good one here, man. I assume Daniels is going over, but I wouldn't mind seeing Grayson win this one just to elevate him.
I really
like Daniels is going over.
I like Grayson better than Uno, but yeah.
Grayson's talent.
So I'm with AJ, probably like a 3.5, just especially for Dark, like a 3.5, because this is a very much a storyline heavy match for probably one of the biggest storylines in AEW and getting focus on Dark. So that's cool.
I'm going to say a 3 just because I feel like this match isn't going to be very good.
See, what do you mean? Match. You're crazy.
It's just gonna be bro. It's just gonna be an okay match.
I don't believe you. I bet they're going like 12, 15 minutes. It was the main event of the show, so it's the last last match on the card.
Okay, it's better than Sonny Kiss and Brandon Cutler versus Private Party. You're right. You're right. It's a match worth sticking around for.
These two are vets too. They've had good matches just in
general.
Yeah,
these are the work rate should be absolutely.
I'm offended that you're saying
really
it's not going to be a
Grayson,
good match.
AJ,
I like Stu Grayson, but I'm not just talking about Stu Grayson. I'm talking about Christopher Daniels.
I'm talking about Christopher Daniels matched up with a fair opponent like Grayson. Grayson's not bad. Man, this is gonna shock Phil. This is gonna be the one.
I will argue with this,
Mr. Dark.
All day
Dark has all these crazy.
Okay, we're watching Dark. We're all watching Dark.
So, I don't really like any of these fucking guys.
Tune in next Tuesday for the live Dark review on Twitter, where we watch Dark and talk about how great it is and commentate on it. We'll be there. You'll be there. No, that's dark for next week. I'm moderately excited. It seems like Phil is very hard to get over a 3, but he's moderately excited, and AJ is too. So for once, we're interested in dark, so we'll check that out. That does wrap everything up for us this week. AJ, is there anything we got to add?
Nope, not that I can think of.
Phil?
Hey.
No?
Nothing.
All right. AJ, go ahead and plug your social media.
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And Phil?
You can follow me on Twitter, Philip Diminno.
Make sure you follow Phil. All he ever does is complain about how he never gains any followers from this podcast. But I guarantee you his followership on Twitter has gone up like 500% since this podcast started. So
Absolutely not.
Oh, I guarantee you had like 20 followers, and then you're all of a sudden you're at like 400. So yeah, that's a lot of
I
percent.
don't have 400. You fucking.
But hey, and as always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can check us out on Instagram at All Elite Everything, and we're on Facebook at facebook.com/All Elite Pod. And as always, you can find me on Twitter at All Elite Andy. Until next time, see ya.